All right.
Hi, everyone. We'll just let you pile into the show, give you a bit of time to get on the stream. Welcome.
G'day, Kate.
Hi, Campbell.
Hi, guys. And John.
Yes. Good to be back. Where's your Gad Swan, Kate? It's missing in the background.
I know it is. I've got some different branding in the background tonight. Got some claw flutes in WA. All right, people are watching, so let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Liberty Chat Season 2. For those of you who haven't seen our show before, this is the Liberal Democrats live chat show. Yes, we're live. We've already talked about what that means before the show, so no foot in mouths tonight, please. I am blessed to be joined by my fellow Lead Senate candidates. I'm Lady Liberty, but I'm also the Lead Senate candidate for Western Australia. And we have Campbell Newman in Queensland, David Limbrick running in Victoria, and this other gentleman you can see on your screen is the reason we are all here. He is the founder of the Liberal Democrats. He is the national president. He's also an expert economist, so we're lucky to have him and lucky to have him on the show tonight. So we do have a special guest coming up, Daisy Cousens. I know a lot of people love and respect her. She's so glamorous. I'm a bit of a fangirl, so thank you, Daisy. You'll be on shortly. And we have 3 House of Representative candidates from New South Wales, my state of WA, and sunny Queensland. So let's go around and see how the campaigning's going. We've got a federal election tip to be called this week if you're a betting man. Campbell Newman in Queensland, how is it going up there?
Oh, really well, thank you. So just to give people a feel for where we are, at this stage, just for those who might be tuning into Liberty Chat for the first time, so there's myself as the lead Senate candidate, Tegan Granger, a young mum who's number 2 on the ticket. We then have 9 House of Reps candidates for various seats around the state. And so we've been out campaigning pretty steadily for the last few months. I think probably the thing I should then quickly segue to is based on the regional tours that we've done and the feedback on the ground, let me just talk about the issues confronting Queensland. So right now, as we have nationally, the overall issue now is becoming cost of living and economic concerns. And I think a bit of a sense of concern about the international situation, but that cost of living thing is really coming through. But Queensland is a very big, diverse state. So as you go around different locations, there are quite specific issues that we'll be campaigning on. So when we talk about cost of living, we're going to be making the point for the entire state that this is due to, frankly, excessive government spending and loose monetary policy, which has, prior to the Ukrainian invasion, created this situation, and it's now only getting worse. So in accordance with our policies, the Freedom Manifesto, we'll be talking about, getting a grip on spending, clawing it back, and, obviously giving tax relief, for example, our policy on the fuel excise. But just in terms of regional Queensland, for people in rural and regional areas, big issue is internet connectivity. Despite all the promises, all the sort of commitments from government in the past, there's still huge issues out there for people, particularly when they're told, businesses told to interact electronically with people like the ATO, ASIC, etc., other parts of government. Another big one is there is a huge shortage of labour, and not just skilled labour, but unskilled labour. And they've really got a situation of full employment in most of the rural towns in Western Queensland. And yet, even if they can get people, then they've got an accommodation crisis. You actually can't find a place to put employees. So that's another big one. If you then run down for the coast from Cairns down back towards Brisbane, the Bruce Highway is a big issue. Dams and irrigation schemes. The government announced the building of the Hells Gate Dam, but there's another one that really should probably be in the front of the queue, which is the Nathan Dam. We've also got issues to do with crime in Cairns and Townsville. Youth crime is out of control. There's an issue with the water supply in Cairns that we'll be fighting on. When we get to Rockhampton, we'll be advocating for a regular army unit to be relocated to that city. We believe it should be an armoured unit because the tanks can only train in Shoalwater Bay, really, apart from Puckapunyal in Victoria. So that's just a taste of the things that we're talking about. We'll be talking about those things in a format of giving local plans to those communities that I've alluded to, but also doing stuff that covers the entire state and social media and radio, and where we can afford to do it, in letterbox drops.
Fantastic. Thank you, Campbell. And it's great to have you on the Liberal Democratic Party ticket. Big name, big draw card for the party. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you running for us in Queensland. David Limbrick from Victoria, the official opposition leader down there. What's happening in Victoria?
Well, there's always lots happening. There's always lots happening in Victoria. But okay, so someone's put up a question. Any updates on the motion you're successful with? Well, funny you should mention that, because I was going to talk about that anyway. So for those of you that have been following what we're doing in Victoria, a few weeks ago, we put up a motion to the new Independent Pandemic Management Advisory Committee. This is a new committee that's meant to advise government on pandemic responses. They haven't really done much yet, but what we found out last week is that they finally had a meeting, and they've agreed to take on the motion that we put forward in Parliament, which was about the vaccine mandates for general workers and also the vaccine passports, the open premises orders. They are going to look at that, they said. So that's great news. And what I'm hoping that we're sort of in at the moment is a phase where the government wants to sort of exit this sort of vaccinated economy, and we sort of need someone. The health minister said today that they haven't got advice to end the vaccine mandates yet. We're hoping that the Independent Advisory Committee will give them advice to end it. So what I've been urging is that the Advisory Committee will give them advice that the vaccine mandates are no longer proportionate, and that they will get rid of them. And that would be a wonderful way for me to end my time in Victorian politics and go into the Senate. So I'd be very, very happy if that was the way I left. Look, other things that we've been doing, I've been traveling a lot around Victoria. I went to Geelong last weekend. I went to Point Cook. I've also been going around to lots of other meetings. What I've noticed is there's a massive groundswell of support for the Liberal Democrats. I'm talking thousands of new members and supporters. People come along, they're really keen to take a sign like a call flute or take flyers and this sort of thing. We've distributed over the last few weeks, few months, over 1,000 call flutes, 100,000 flyers. And as I said to the people at the meeting last week, I said it's within the power of people to magnify their reach to lots of people. So if you think about like a call flute, right? Conservatively, every call flute that someone puts on their fence, very, very conservative, 1,000 people see it, right? If we get 1,000 call flutes distributed, that's 1 million impressions. And so what we're keen to do is get as many materials distributed to as many people who want to do that, who want to, put them up on their fence as possible, and get as many eyeballs on the Liberal Democrats, because I think that there is no better time for, and than in history, really, that we've had such an appetite for members, for people in the Senate and in federal Parliament to defend liberty. And this is what I've been saying for a while now, in that the people that value liberty the most are those that have lost it. And we're in a state now in Victoria and many other states around the country where we've had more people lose their liberty than ever before. And therefore, there is more people activated than ever before and keen to see defenders of liberty in the federal parliament. And that's what the Liberal Democrats can provide.
That's right. Here, here. And I am your Senate candidate for Western Australia, and I echo what David just said. Me and David have discussions about who's got the biggest dictator. So it's a tight one between McGowan and Dan Andrews. I think McGowan's got you by a nose at the moment. Not that it's a competition you want to win, but that's why I'm running for the Senate in Western Australia, because people have come to me. I'm not from Western Australia. I'm from South Australia. I didn't get to see my family for 2 years because of the hard border. It's just been absolutely terrifying living under this sort of state of emergency that's being rolled out every 2 weeks in WA in particular. So I am your candidate in WA. As I said at the start, we have Campbell Newman in Queensland, David Limbrick in Victoria. We also have the one and only Topher Field running for us in Tassie. He will be on the show next week. I'm going to hold you to that, Topher. We also have John Ruddick in New South Wales. He's usually on the show, but he double booked himself tonight. He will be back next week. And we did have Canel Tonkin in South Australia. Unfortunately, he had to withdraw for health reasons. We wish him all the best. He was fantastic for the party and saw the party through the state election recently. We're still in the mix for the last upper house seat there. And Northern Territory, watch this space. We are going to be running the biggest election campaign in our history. John Humphreys, you're the founder and the president of our party. How proud of you of how far your party has come.
Well, I got to say, it's hard to go after those last 3 sessions, especially Kate, with you already giving the big hint. Stay tuned tomorrow. There's going to be a big Lib Dems announcement. And it's hard to go after what David Limbrick says. As the people were saying in the comments, you really do provide people with a lot of hope. And in Victoria over the last couple of years, hope has been in short supply. So it's been much needed. So you've been a godsend to many people. So appreciate that. I saw some questions coming in about Topher. So just to reiterate that point, he's not here this week. Topher just turned 40 and his wife just bought him a surprise getaway. So we can't begrudge him that, 40th birthday escape. But he will be in this room, in this chat next week, which is going to be a big one. So stay tuned for next week. To directly answer your question, very proud. I mean, this is a new stage in the Lib Dems. Parties go through ebbs and flows, and we really are evolving and taking a step up. And you see that with all of the new blood as well. I mean, you go along to events. I went along to an event for Campbell last night, and you see a lot of new faces. For a while, you'd go along to Lib Dems events and see the same faces. It's very refreshing now and I hear the same thing, and I see the same thing in the pictures around the other states, especially again in Victoria. David, the events you go to, they're getting bigger and better, it seems, every week. So this is great stuff to see. There is it was also sad, as you said, that Canel, health reasons, is having to step away from South Australia. But again, we're going to have an announcement in that space coming soon as well. That one's not tomorrow, but stay tuned for that. So a few big announcements coming up in the near future for this party. Another announcement that we didn't make, but was made on our behalf by Anthony Green recently, that some people have noticed, is, and you would have hopefully all received, or the party members and supporters would have received an email from me recently, just clarifying and re-clarifying, and I'll do it again now. We will be the Liberal Democrats for this election. So many of you may have heard already that we lost the High Court challenge, or we didn't succeed in the High Court challenge to knock out the recent laws. The government and Labor, Liberal and Labor, got together to give themselves monopoly on generic words, which is ridiculous, but they got away with it. So we challenged it in the High Court. We lost 3.5 to 4. Yes, that doesn't make sense. It's 3 to 4, but as John Ruddick likes to say, the Chief Justice counts as 1.5, and the Chief Justice voted with us. So we lost 3.5 to 4 in that High Court challenge. So you will hear talk now. You may already have heard talk of the need to change the name and or that the AEC will go forward with deregistration. And both of those things have been bandied around. The important thing to note about both of those things and any other option is they're all going to happen, if they happen, after this election. So I've been saying to people, I'm classifying all new information in 2 categories in my mind. There's issues to deal with now, and there's issues to deal with on the 22nd of May. If the election's on the 21st of May, then there's a bunch of problems in my mind that I just categorize as 22 May problems. And this issue of the party name and dealing with the AEC, yes, it's something we're going to have to deal with, but it's a 22 May problem. So the important point now, Liberal Democrats going into this eletion guaranteed, locked in, and confirmed by the AEC in Senate estimates. So there is no ambiguity about that going forward. Dive forward. There was one other observation I had. I know you didn't ask me for any, but I'm going to give one anyway. Many people have lamented the weakness of the Morrison government, myself included. I think probably everyone in this room would share that sentiment. But they've looked at the alternative and they haven't really been blown away. A lot of people feel like they're caught in a situation of having to hold their nose and vote for a party based on them saying that they're not the other party, which it seems like it's been that way in Australia for far too long, that the sales pitch of both major parties is simply that they're not the other party, which is really an inadequate sales pitch for politics. It really shows the lack of political leadership that we've had for going on decades now in this country. But still, I run into a lot of people that conclude that, well, they don't like Morrison, they think he might still be better than Albo. And I can understand that instinct. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but it seems to me that it's quite likely now that Albo's going to win. So a bunch of people find that a bit depressing, and it may be depressing. I want to give you a silver lining. Even if you think that is depressing, I want to give you a silver lining. I think we can all accept that at some stage in the future, Labor would eventually beat the Liberals. It's very unlikely that the Liberals will rule for the next 100 years. So it's going to happen at some point. I want you to ask yourself, if Labor was going to beat the Liberals at some point, when would you want them to do it? And I think about 3 years ago, when Bill Shorten ran a campaign saying that he was going to ramp up taxes to the hilt and spend like a drunken sailor. If he had won, if Labor had won that election, what lesson would people have learned? The political hacks and stacks and all of the numbers people in the back room, the lesson they would have learned is if you do really irresponsible economics and tax and spend to the hilt, you can win. And the lesson they would have learned, they would have copied that, and that would have been future campaigns. That didn't win. So if Labor has to win at some point, probably the least bad scenario in which Labor could win is a scenario where Albo is trying to pretend that he's Bob Hawke. Now, we all know he's not, but I commend him for at least pretending he is. If Labor has to win at some point, it may as well be when they're not promising to increase tax and spending, and when the Liberals have been a total failure, that have signed up to net zero, that have locked everyone down for 2 years, that have ramped up the debt to over $1 trillion. If Labor has to beat Liberals at some point, doing it in this scenario is probably better than most other scenarios. Now, I'm not saying that means you should go and preference Labor. Of course, you should vote for us, 1, UAP 2, all the other freedom parties after that, and Liberal and Labor down the bottom, pick your poison. But I guess I'm trying to just say, as a silver lining, there is potentially a good lesson to be learned out of Albo winning and Shorten losing. That's, I guess, the takeaway from that. So take from that what you will. Happy to take questions, arguments. Feel free to throw fruit. But that was a thought I had and wanted to share with the group. So take it away, Kate.
Thank you, John. And one thing that you should take credit for is that the Freedom Manifesto, so this is the document, this is the 10 policies to save Australia that all candidates have pledged allegiance to. I carry this copy with me everywhere I go. My friends laugh at me, but I say here, this is why you should vote for us. I'm very proud of this document. John Humphreys put a lot of work into that with a lot of co-authors too. So thank you for giving us something, 10 policies that I 100% agree with. I can't believe I'm saying that as someone who's a bit cynical about politics, but this is a document you should check out on ldp.org.au.
Now, just say, well, I love to take credit. If you're going to give credit for that, I need to really quickly give a shout out to John Ruddick, who was a driving force behind that document, and Rob Cribb, and also Mark Hornshaw. As the people that, and myself, I'll take a quarter of the credit. But John Ruddick was really the person who drove that forward. So all of those people deserve to share the glory.
And John Ruddick's campaign launch is this Saturday in Sydney, 4 o'clock at the Art House. A lot of distinguished guests will be there. John Humphreys, David Limbrick, and myself, if I can include myself in that category. David, we should have practiced something and started the Lib Dem family band. You're known for your drumming. You played the drums at your campaign launch. I'm a singer and keyboardist. Maybe we'll talk about that on Saturday. Now, moving on.
As long as nobody plays the ukulele, please.
Moving on to our very special guest. So in our first episode in our new season, we have someone that I'm very excited to introduce. She's a Sky News commentator, media personality, also a political commentator. So she's perfect for our show. The one and the only. I'll just get her ready to come up on the screen. My hands are shaking. Here we go. This is Daisy Cousens. Daisy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Daisy.
Thank you very much, Kate, for having me. It is lovely to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I do appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate everything that you do. You're known for calling people out on their opinions and saying your opinions. So thank you for everything you do. Gentlemen, have any of you had the pleasure of being interviewed or by Daisy on Sky yet?
Last night and on Sky.
There you go.
So this must be deja vu for you, Daisy, with regards to getting caught in the same room as Campbell. I've seen you guys have done a few events lately. I wonder, though, Daisy, for the people who didn't have the benefit of being at the event last night, this was Campbell gave a great speech, and then you guys on stage together doing some Q&A. I didn't actually warn you of anything I was going to say right now, and that's because I didn't know it until I started saying it. But Daisy, would you be willing to give a quick summary of that event, or your wrap up, or your synopsis?
Yeah, look, it was a really lovely night. Did you guys get that vibe? It was just, I mean, I'll talk about it, but it's so nice to just have that many like-minded people in a room with one agenda, and that is to make Australia a better place. And like, there was a lot of love in that room last night. I felt, I'm being sort of silly and sentimental, but it was just, you know, after the trash of the last couple of years, it was great to be in that space. And Campbell, your speech was phenomenal. Like, it was so great. And I think I said this to you on stage. It wasn't just that you ticked off, you know, so many great boxes and observations of what's been going on, you know, with the fact we've got to face up to the fact that Australia is not what we thought it was. It's not a country of larrikins. It's a country of seemingly quite compliant, timid people who are sort of happy to be brainwashed and snitch on their neighbours. That was very, very confronting. You know, we talked about how on earth the Liberal Party can possibly have some of their policies about allegedly respecting individual freedoms on their website.
Statement of values, yeah.
Straight face.
Yeah.
That was
Should
quite
jump in there.
extraordinary.
We had literally everyone watching. We printed out the statement of values from the Liberal Party website, and Daisy started to go through it, and they're just not doing any of it. It's unbelievable. I don't know how. Yeah, I think Andrew Cooper from CPAC made an important point at one stage. I think he said, where's the effect of, there are obviously many people still in the Liberal Party who think it's more important to be with their tribe rather than their principles. That's pretty cutting. That goes to the heart of the matter. And I think the more that we point out that the Liberal Party have abandoned the principles that they supposedly espouse, I think the more people will finally, the lights will come on. That they're not for small business, they're not for small government, they're not for low tax, they're not for individual freedom. It was like a case of exposing the emperor has no clothes last night when Daisy went through it.
And all she had to do was actually read it out. I thought it was quite remarkable and telling that as you read it out, steadily the audience started laughing more and more. Like you weren't telling a joke, you were just saying, this is what the Liberals say they believe. And by the end, everyone was in laughter. It was so obviously not true. At this point.
I mean, it's really extraordinary, is it? One of the bits I loved was that they said they believed in, you know, individual freedom. They believe in apparently freedom of association. And I thought, well, we all remember the lockdowns and the border closures that they believe in. This was my favorite bit. They believe in, to quote them, lean government.
After last week's budget,
website.
After a budget that the Labor Party, the Labor Party would have been proud to hand down last week's budget, and I think the budget has actually had the Labor Party scratching their heads about what can we possibly say. Finally, well, it was just spend more money on aged care, but that's all they could do. I mean,
and
that's
I
telling.
think that. Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting. I actually think that budget was such a missed opportunity for Anthony Albanese, and I know we all think that, but I have a slightly different opinion. I mean, I know it was a cash splash. Okay, it was designed to buy votes. There's a tax offset. There's tax time coming up. We know it was sort of to buy votes. Albanese's mistake, though, was going in and saying, oh, they're not thinking of the future. This is just a last-minute short-term thing. He was right, but I actually think that Australians at the moment a lot of them aren't really thinking long term because we've been conditioned over the last 2 years to think in 2-week blocks of time. 2 weeks here, 4 weeks here, 6 weeks there, maybe 2 months away. Like no one really for 2 years has been able to plan for the future. So rather than, I think, a lot of people thinking, well, what's the 5 to 10 year plan? Most people are probably thinking, oh my God, how am I going to make it to Christmas? So the Liberals, even though it was very imperfect budget, I think they've probably tapped into that anxiety a lot of people have and are sort of sating that with immediate things like the cutting the fuel excise tax. That's the big one. And Albo and the Labor Party, it just went whoosh over their heads. So they may have actually shot themselves in the foot slightly in that respect. They've not read the room properly. People aren't, I don't think they're really thinking long term, and Labor has missed that. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out in a couple of months of the election.
Far be it from me to be the contrarian, and I don't want to say that I'm disagreeing with that, but I do want to give a little bit of credit where it's due. The cutting of the fuel tax, I think it should be cut. I think it should be permanent. So the mistake they made, once again, is the one good thing they did, they made temporary. All of the things they got wrong, they made permanent. But, you could imagine a worse budget, which was exactly the same, but without the fuel tax cut. So, one cheer for the budget in at least doing that. So I do want to give them the credit for that one step. Look, if you'll give me the permission to be a little wonky, sometimes when you talk about the size of government, people talk about government spending as a percentage of GDP, which is a very cheeky metric because it presupposes that as we get richer, the government should get bigger, which is, if you think about it, is a ridiculous thing to assume. So if you look at the size of government as real per capita, adjusted for the population, adjusted for inflation, here's a factoid for you. The size of government has tripled over the last 50 years. Tripled, increased by 200%. And that is a consistent trend up with both sides of government. So someone wrote a comment up there before saying the ALP and the LNP, two sides of the same coin. I don't think they're quite the same, but I got to say the long-term trend has been ever-growing government, basically whoever you vote for. There's 3 notable exceptions over the last 50 years. The first budget of John Howard, and that really gets to take a lot of the credit for everything John Howard got right. The first budget of Jeff Kennett, basically helped to save the Victorian economy, and the first budget of the person sitting in this room, Campbell Newman, one of the few budgets in the history of Australia, especially for the last 50 years, that actually had enough guts to cut the size of government. So congratulations to you, Campbell. It's one of the reasons we love you around here. I do note, by the way, that that's one of the reasons the Liberal Party runs scared away from your legacy, which I think is a massive mistake. It was a credit to you that you did that budget, and the Liberals are weak.
Try this, just for viewers from interstate today. Here's the sad and sorry state of the LNP. At the Queensland Press Club or Media Club lunch in the last year or so, the Leader of the Opposition, David Crisafulli, the Leader of the LNP, was asked a question that went along the lines of, Mr. Crisafulli, your predecessor downsized government, got rid of 14,000 public servants. Since then, the public service is now this big, a lot bigger. What do you say to that? Is the public service the right size or does it need to be cut? He said, it's the right size. So they've hosed out their principals way out to Moreton Bay and the Coral Sea. There you go.
I hesitate to say weak leadership because I think the correct term is simply no leadership, a total lack of leadership, which contrasts nicely with what both of you gentlemen have done in your respective states for the good of freedom. While we've got Daisy here, with your permission, I want to make an accusation, put you in the hot seat. Daisy, your industry, I mean, yes, Campbell and David's industry, we throw rocks at politicians. That's kind of our gig because, we like small government. But your industry,
the fourth estate,
I think it's letting us down badly in this country and beyond. I don't just mean you personally. I don't mean you personally at all, right? Nice exception. But still, I'm going to, in this environment, put you on the spot. What has gone wrong with media? Is there a solution? Is there an explanation?
Oh, God. I mean, I could sit here for 3 hours and talk to you about this. I think part of it is, and I think we can all agree with this, there are just too many lefties in journalism. And I have nothing against lefties. I'm perfectly happy to have relationships and chat to people I disagree with. But the problem is they come up through high school when, you know, the education system is so left-leaning. Then they go through the journalism degrees at universities, which is more left-wing again. And then they flock to the capital cities, which tend to be very left-wing. And then they go straight to the press gallery. And they're in this sort of bubble of sort of leftism with conservatives being demonized. And a lot of it's this kind of woke ideology, this idealistic big government shtick. And they have absolutely no one around them to offer any kind of contradictory opinion. So they get this, and because they don't want to talk to anyone else, because they don't have time, and of course they all spend too much time on Twitter, which I really think is the nail in the coffin. They've got no idea what your average person is thinking and feeling. Like it used to be 20 years ago that if a journalist, and I'm not a journalist, by the way, God no, I'd call myself a commentator, but a journalist, if they wanted to know what the public was thinking, they'd go onto the street with a notepad and a microphone and do vox pops. Excuse me, sir, what would you give me a sentence on this topic? Or would you give me a sentence on this topic? Now, they go on Twitter, they search someone, they find an interesting tweet for some rando, and they put it into an article on the internet, and they call it journalism. And that is how they gauge public opinion from randos on Twitter.
But can I just interject in one thing? This is the thing that's really baffled me in the last 2 years. And I think David, this will ring a call with David, particularly in sort of COVID ground zero. Like, surely, well, okay, the impression I've always got is that journalists were trained to be seekers after the truth, to go and to get to the bottom of matters, to hold, power to account. And yet, during COVID, they've been part of the whole damn apparatus of government. They've been the propagandists. They've just waved stuff through. They haven't, apart from a few isolated individuals, they've never asked the tough questions. I mean, whatever happened to seekers of truth? I like it. That's what particularly gets me.
There's a wonderful meme that shows that beautifully, where they show old journalism was journalists asking questions to power. New journalism is journalists hearing their talking points from power and passing it on to the people. Yeah. And I think that's the point you're making there. Can I just say just quickly on Daisy saying that she's quite happy to hang out with lefties? It's true. She even was willing to marry one, Callum being a coming out bastard and all. But sorry, David, you were going to say.
Yeah, like, I mean, with the media, like, you have to consider during the pandemic, the advertising revenue disappeared, right? Like during lockdowns, all of the major companies just pulled their advertising revenue. And all of a sudden, and I asked about this in Parliamentary Accounts and Estimates Committee, like the biggest customer of the media was the government during the lockdowns, right? And so you're in this situation where the media is meant to hold to account their biggest customer. Now, if anyone can't see the conflict of interest there, they're not looking hard enough. And what we've noticed recently is that the media has been doing a bit better job now that things have opened up a bit more and businesses have started advertising. So hopefully that will continue. But certainly during the pandemic, we certainly saw a massive failure of the media. And I think a lot of it was around just the fact that their biggest customer was the government themselves.
What about the ABC, David? Like they went with the flow too, though. No advertising there. Of course, that's our policy. I've got to throw money.
But I mean, their revenue is driven by political parties that want more government, right? So of course they're not going to criticise total government control of things. And, that's what we saw during the pandemic. So, I beg to differ, guys. I think I think there's something fundamentally wrong with their training. I think there's, in my speech last night, I was talking about Australia's education system breeding conformism. I think it's something to do with that. It's like a fear of going outside the pack, a fear of actually saying, hey, maybe vaccines are delivering side effects, or questioning the probity of a contract to do with this whole thing. They just don't seem to want to do anything that sort of takes them away from the conventional mainstream view of their little group.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, certainly, at least with some, obviously not all journalists, but certainly some, is a lot of them are millennials. dare I say it, a lot of them are my generation, the reporters and stuff, and I hate my generation. Oh my God, I think we're just frightful. But it's that age group where we're kind of different from Gen X and the baby boomers who went through sort of, the free love and that whole sort of socially revolutionary stage. Whereas millennials, like we grew up with the internet. We were the first generation that like online bullying became a thing. So you grew up not really wanting to stand out because, it's not like in the old days where if you got hammered in the playground, it'd be, while you're at school, it would follow you home. So I reckon that has really bred exactly that mindset amongst journalists that they want to be conformists. They don't really want to stand out. They don't really want to ask the probing questions because they know they'll get annihilated for it on Twitter. So, we can, perhaps it's the advertising revenue, certainly with the ABC, like they're not going to want to criticize the government that much because they're government funded. But a lot of it, I think, is just these younger journos. By younger, I mean sort of, late 20s and sort of 30s. They have a totally different attitude to it that's bred by this strange millennial anxiety of standing out. It's really weird.
That actually takes us nicely full circle to the point that Campbell made, and I think Daisy made last night and remade again here. The idea that Australia is quite a conformist nation now. The idea that we are larrikins, it's what we like to think about ourselves. But you look at the number of people mindlessly wearing masks and you show me the larrikin spirit. The Crocodile Dundee idea is a nice movie. It is not Australia anymore.
No, sadly. But maybe we can take us back on that path at least.
That would be very good. Speaking of mindless conformity, I don't know if you guys saw this. It just struck me in the press conference today with Mark McGowan. He was, it was outside. It was in a field. There were only a few people there, and he and maybe one of the medical people he was with, they were both standing there outdoors in the breeze with masks covering their faces. And I'm like, what? How is that scientific? You were standing around with hardly anyone there in a field with a mask on, with a breeze blowing in your face. Like, what are people supposed to think? It's insane.
Western Australia has become a very different place to live, unfortunately, but we're not all like that, Daisy. I swear, I don't walk around with the mask outside.
You are a wonderful exception, an absolute exception, Kate, and I do so admire what you're doing, honestly.
And I thought there was just pathetic seeing all those idiots in the Parliament and the chamber wearing their masks and socially distanced. Give it a break, guys. Let's get out of the cult, shall we? God, what a bunch of pathetic cowards.
Now, of course, sorry, Daisy, I was going to say, of course, the Liberal Democrats respect your choice. If you want to wear a mask, you can wear one. We just don't want mask mandates. Don't force us to wear something. If we want to wear it, we will wear it. Go on, Daisy, sorry.
Well, it's just so peculiar, isn't it, to see? I agree, seeing all those politicians in that big empty chamber, socially distancing and wearing masks, it's so weird. It's like they either don't want to admit that it's over, because we all know a lot of them get kind of a kick out of the power trip of being able to put in all that legislation and doing the big dramatic press conferences and, people actually know their names, or they don't want to admit that they were wrong in a funny sort of way, like... Do you know what I mean, Campbell?
That's it. And can I tell you, I'll bet you anything, I'll go back to their offices in Parliament House and they'll be mingling with, 4 or 5 staff members and other people coming in and out. There will be no masks.
It'll come straight off.
I will say that many times in Parliament, basically you're sort of forced into doing it, right? Like they make up an order in Parliament, you have to wear a mask and you got no choice in the matter, and they'll kick you out if you don't wear one. So I'm not actually sure, who voluntarily chose to do it and who did it just because they had to sit in Parliament. But I know I've been in that situation myself in Parliament where, you have to just do it or you get out.
David, I remember a certain parliamentarian, that would be, actually it was 2 of you and Tim sitting on your protest on the front steps. Don't sell yourself short, mate. You've taken a stand on a number of occasions in the past 2 years, and these pathetic cowards haven't. There's only 1 or 2 people like George Christensen, who'd be prepared to speak about these matters. There's a few isolated cases and individuals who've been brave, but most of them have been a bunch of sheep, and that's why we get the outcomes we do in this country. You know,
We
they're
actually
there
got,
to Canberra
Tim
to
and I
fight
actually got
for-
kicked out of Parliament. So
Yeah.
we got suspended from Parliament because we wouldn't hand over our paperwork for vaccines.
Exactly. And that
But-
was the right thing to do.
But rather than give up, we found a cool nightclub owner, Chase Lounge in Melbourne. Go there if you want to go out for a good night. We set up Parliament in a nightclub, and it was totally awesome. And the government was pretty upset that we still managed to run Parliament in itself in a nightclub.
That's right. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is the Liberal Democratic Party. We are a political party. We do party as well. Sorry about my dad joke. But welcome. We have Daisy Cousens on our show. This is the first episode in season 2. We used to stream this just for our members, but we thought with an election around the corner, you guys deserve to know who we are and who you should vote for. We've got Campbell Newman in Queensland, David Limbrick, who will be running in the Senate in Victoria, and John Humphreys is our president. He's the reason we're here. Now, we have in the waiting room of this studio 3 candidates from across the country who are running in the lower house. So this is the biggest election the Lib Dems have ever contested. We're approaching 101 Libertarians, as I like to call them, and all states and territories will have someone to vote for the Liberal Democrats. So I'm just going to bring them into the studio now. We'll start with Damian Coory, who's running up in Queensland. And then we've got Paul Markham, who's running in my state of Western Australia. And also, last but not least, and many of you might know, Victor Tay in New South Wales. So welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. Daisy, meet our lower house candidates. Everybody meet Daisy. I'm sure you know who she is. So
Yes, hello.
let's start with you, Damian. You're running in Queensland. What electorate and why are you running on the Lib Dem ticket?
Mute. You're on mute.
You're muted, Damian.
Damian, unmute yourself.
you're
This
such
is
a
Don't
good
live.
listen on mute.
There we
you
go.
know.
We got you. Sorry. This is
Double
live
microphone
television,
thing
guys.
going on. Sorry, guys.
Such a good voice and face the radio. So really,
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, John. Yeah, guys, no, look, those of you who sort of watched The Other Side, I know there's some people out there who used to watch my podcast, nowhere near as popular as Daisy's, but, know that I'm a classical liberal and that I basically started that podcast to sort of, relate back to the conversation you were just having, because I came back to Australia after living overseas for several years and noticed that there, is no classical liberal media in this country, none. So apart from Sky News, on mainstream television, mainstream radio now, and newspapers, just only one side of the story is ever heard. So I started the podcast called The Other Side. I got involved with Discernible in Melbourne, fantastic platform that started to produce the show for me. And I saw David on one day. Through other coincidences, I met Campbell. I'd been a fan of Daisy's for a long time and consumed a lot of her content. Then I met John, Mr. Humphreys, who's an inspiration and just brilliant academically around all this stuff. So just so many fabulous, interesting people that I wanted to be involved in. And frankly, as a former journalist, I was bored out of my wits, and I'm sick of being on the outside. I want to get into the game and have some direct input. So I put my hand up to run for the inner Brisbane inner western suburbs, and it's a little bit of a challenging electorate because it's very green. I was helping out the LNP at the last state election, and the candidate lost to the Greens, so it is the only green electorate. So we've got a real ideological battle on our hands in this electorate. The federal electorate of Ryan it goes from northwest Brisbane to southwest Brisbane, and it includes the University of Queensland and some of the most woke inner city suburbs of Brisbane as well. But it does, it really is a place where the Greens have got a foothold. And they got, in the last election in 2019, 20%, over 20%, 20.3% of the primary vote. So we are in real trouble. This is not a joke. This is not a drill. We need to get all hands on deck. So anyone out there who is in that area or is just in Brisbane and you want to support our campaign, absolutely please get in touch, because we've got a big battle on our hands. And this electorate is currently LNP. It could very easily turn green. And it really is in play for us. We've got a serious chance because of the mix here that if we just get enough people thinking, okay, this is real liberalism, this is what we're after, we could actually get over the line. So I'm playing to win, and we're playing hard, and we've got some good backers. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic about it. But yep, that's why I'm here.
And just while we've got you, Damian, what are the people in your electorate telling you? What do they want represented for them in Parliament?
Look, I'm very passionate about the fact that it's a values election, and I'm hearing that from people. So I think the approach that the Liberal Party are taking is fantastic, because they're obsessed with this idea that all elections are local and people care about their potholes and their roads. People do care about their potholes and their roads, but this might be why the Liberal Party keep winning the city council but never win anything else. They don't talk about the big picture issues. People have values. People care about their country. They care about the values upon which their country is based. This country is under attack. Make no mistake. We are under attack from leftism. We are under attack from this hideous woke identity politics ideology. We have got to stand up and push back. And now is the time. And I'll just say to everybody, it's not a time to sit around and pontificate. It's a time to get up and act in the next 5 weeks, because this is a special election. I don't know that we're going to get the band together quite like this. I hope we continue to have this level of people on board, but this is special. Let's run with it. Let's get behind everybody. Let's get out there on the streets, fight a great ground game, get on social media, retweet, repost, share everything we possibly can. We can do this, but we've got to act and we've got to do stuff from now until that election is called.
Damian said something that's been said before on Liberty Chat and stressed each time. You said retweet and repost. So
yeah,
do take that to heart. I know it can feel a little bit cringe that you're overburdening your family and friends with yet another Damian Coory post, but please do it.
I've lost heaps of friends and family, so
they'll come back after the election.
Because you make new friends and you make like-minded friends, and it's wonderful.
It's hugely powerful. This is the mainstream media aren't very friendly to us or minor parties in general, and the algorithm doesn't normally try to help us. So the more that average people can retweet and reshare the excellent material, and also Victor's stuff. I mean, that's easy to share, right? Because Victor's always got smiling faces and a yard sign. So if you can retweet and reshare, please do.
Let's go to Victor now. Thank you, Damian. We'll keep you on the screen because we have more questions for you coming up. But Victor Tay in New South Wales, you're a familiar face. Welcome to the Lib Dem ticket. Why are you running for the Liberal Democrats in Werriwa?
Yeah, so Werriwa is an electorate out in southwestern Sydney. I also pastor a church in the Liverpool area, so I've done that for 7 years. For me, I think my story is very similar to many others that are getting involved in politics for the first time. Over the last 2.5 years, we're all very concerned about the erosion of our freedoms, especially for me. One that's very close to my heart is the freedom of religion, the freedom to gather together. That's really what pushed me over the line over those lockdowns. I couldn't believe in Australia that people couldn't meet for church. So, it's, we need people involved. We need principled people in politics. And I just thought, I have to throw my hat in the ring. Otherwise, out in southwestern Sydney in Werriwa, we may not even have an option of somebody, a politician that actually respects freedom, wants less government and wants more freedom. So I'm also a very passionate advocate for lower taxes. I think, not just myself, I'm probably sure everybody in the party and just anyone I speak to as well, we all think we pay way too much taxes. I think we're sick of the waste, we're sick of the inefficiency, and we're sick of the corruption as well. So this is what I love about the Lib Dems. I felt they were the only party that was really serious about rolling back the power of government, rolling back the debt, the spending, the taxation. And I think that's something that all Australians can benefit from.
So someone's called you Victor, the Rebel of Sydney. God bless you, Victor. So it's very exciting to have you here tonight. What are you hearing when you're out on the streets? I see you every day posting something out and about, canvassing people. What are they saying to you?
Yeah, I'll just address that comment. Yeah, so if you don't know why people are calling me the Rebel from Sydney in 2020, when the lockdowns first occurred, one of the reasons we could go out of our homes is we could exercise. So we had the idea, well, why don't I go out and exercise and at the same time hold a sign and walk in front of Parliament House? So that garnered me a bit of notoriety and a bit of a profile, and I was arrested a couple of times because of it. We're still fighting that in the Supreme Court. So we're trying to protect our freedom of speech and freedom of political communication, even during these so-called pandemics. But what I'm hearing on the ground out in southwestern Sydney is everyone's concerned about cost of living, and rightly so, because the government has made it so bloody expensive to live and work and run a business in Australia. So one thing that I think really resonates with people is our policy on taxation. I mean, once people hear about us, we want to push to raise the tax-free threshold to $40,000, reduce the income tax rate to a low flat 20%. And I just asked them, imagine how much money that would put more in your pocket. You have control over your funds, less money for the politicians and bureaucrats. And everyone's sick of politicians, and that's why my flyer starts with, are you sick of politicians taxing more of your money and taking away your freedom of choice? So that's one thing I'm always hearing about, is the cost of living and just the excess taxation. But another thing I think that's really close to home for everyone out here, especially in southwestern Sydney, are the vaccine mandates. Because even though you think, the vaccine mandates came in on maybe this, this COVID stuff is all over, but no, because so many people who were vaccinated, they admit to me that they were coerced into being vaccinated. They had no choice. I mean, a lot of men out in southwestern Sydney, they couldn't lose their jobs. They had to pay for their mortgages. They had to provide for their families. And they're quite, upset that they were coerced into something they didn't want to do out of their own free choice. And not only that, people now are starting to lose their jobs. So the companies that are mandating vaccines because of the coercion from government, these people are now starting to lose their jobs. March, April, May is when these company policies are going to affect. So it's still something very raw with people, that they were either coerced into the vaccines, they've lost their jobs because of the vaccines, or they know somebody that's lost their job because of the vaccines. And other terrible stories I'm hearing are like, people cannot visit their dying loved ones in hospital. I mean, this is just absolutely terrible and heartless. And I just had a resident try and email the Premier, and then they just get like a robo response back, a copy and paste of, no, these are just the policies we have to do. It's completely heartless what is going on. So that is a huge issue. And I'd say the last one that I hear about all the time is many parents complaining about the quality of schools. So I think our policy on education and decentralizing it, putting the power back to parents to choose the schools, making schools compete and improving their quality of services, I think that really resonates with people out in southwestern Sydney. A lot of families, a lot of young families out here.
I could see Paul Markham nodding his head through a lot of that. Paul is a Western Australian lower house candidate for the seat of Forest, which includes the beautiful Margaret River. Paul, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. I'm your lead Senate candidate, and it's a pleasure to have you. Why are you running in Forest?
Oh, well, I must say that I just was very, very lucky to be granted that as the area to run in. As many people would know, even people over in the eastern states, the great southwest area of Forest includes all those wonderful tourism areas such as Margaret River, Bustleton, Dunsborough. So it's a really great area to work with. It's a very big tourist attraction. It's also very, very varied it's got lots of other things going on for it. It's a very rural area. It's got a lot of agriculture. It's got all kinds of industries, mining, coal. It does produce coal out of the Capel area. And it's very, 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 very varied. So there's a lot of things that going on there. I'll just jump back a little bit, but why did I get involved in running is, well, I don't really think of myself as a political person at all. Maybe my family and my friends would disagree with that because they always had to listen to me rabbiting on and talking about politics and how, my opinions on things all of the time. So when I did say I was going to run for politics, there's a lot of people just, nodding their head and perhaps rolling their eyes. But with the way this country is being run at the moment, over the last 2 years has been absolutely disastrous for both our own human rights and the way that the country itself, the way that the money is just being spent willy-nilly, rules arbitrary rules, as we know, especially in Western Australia, where we have our great Premier making rules up as he goes with never any evidence about why. Still hasn't shown any of the medical evidence that he relies upon. And it does have a devastating effect on communities. Our Premier is one of those people who always points out that tourism in WA over the last 2 years has been booming. And he uses that as a good sign of his leadership. But in part of that's because for 2 years now, West Australians have been trapped in the country, in this state. So there's nowhere to go. But if you go and you speak to the people who are actually running tourism type businesses in the state, they are really, really on the edge because it's very, very tight margins. They don't have enough people to work for them. There's a real struggle. And Campbell Newman made the comment earlier about if you could even get people to come and work in some of these rural areas or in smaller towns, there isn't any accommodation to be able to support them, except at tourism prices. And because everyone's going down to these towns, the prices of accommodation are through the roof. So our whole economy has become completely unbalanced by this. And it's anyway, I just felt that I shouldn't just be sitting here rabbiting on to my friends and colleagues and family and saying that this is not right. And I felt that I needed to stand up and make a stand for what I believe in. And I have looked at quite a few different parties, but I've been involved as a member of the Liberal Dems for at least since the last election, but was not an active person. But as I said, this is an important time for us now. Like, this coming election is really, really essential, and we have to really stand up and ask everybody, all of our members, to stand up, reach out to their friends, and start getting the message out to people.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and I think that's a fantastic note to end our show tonight on. It's people like you that we need in our party, and it's our supporters as well. This is the most important election of Daisy and my generation, at least. Now is the time to put people like Victor and Paul and Damian and my Senate colleagues in the Parliament to give us a voice again. We're sick of being drowned out by the radical left or the loony right, if I can call them that. It's time to have Lib Dems in the Parliament. So any last words from Daisy? Thank you for joining us. Any advice for the Lib Dems ahead of this election?
Well, look, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun, but I don't know if I'm qualified to give any advice, but just look, as Andrew Breitbart always said, walk towards the fire and don't worry about what they call you, because they will come for you and they will call you all sorts of things and worse. But just remember, if you're there, then you've got to accept it, and you just got to keep walking towards the fire.
Thank you, Daisy. And John, any last words from you, our president and founding father?
Nothing witty and wise, except to say, with the joy of doing this live, I believe David Limbrick is knocking on the door to try and get back in. Kate, if you can.
Oh, sorry, I'm not. And we've got Campbell here. Yeah. We'll have you all on the screen to say good night. This is the Lib Dem family. Campbell, last words from you.
David?
Look, I'm going to do something very exciting on Saturday. I'm going to travel on an aeroplane, which I haven't done for 2 years. I'm going to Sydney. I'm going to go up and see all you guys in Sydney. So if you're in Sydney, the only place to be on Saturday afternoon is the Art House Hotel. I'm going to be there cheering on John Ruddick's campaign launch. I hope to see some of the other New South Wales candidates. I'm really looking forward to meet people up there. So, I'm going on a plane. It's going to be awesome.
I'm going on a plane too.
Don't forget the mask, mate.
For those who can't travel,
Australia, I know.
Good luck. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Kate,
Thank you for joining us. One last
thing,
word,
just
Damian.
while we're doing plugs, can I just say Campbell's speech last night at the CPAC event in Brisbane was astounding, and I would like everyone to jump online and watch it now. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a really inspiring speech when you're starting to get down. So jump on if you need a little bit of an uplift.
On that, thank you for saying that. But I would then ask people who go and see it on the CPAC Facebook site. That's the best place to get it. Please, again, share it.
Yes.
If we could get every Australian out there to see the speech, not that I'm talking about myself, but the content. It's the content of the speech. Yeah, we would do very, very well. Yeah, it's about the thoughts that were there reflected last night. That's what we've got to get across to people.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This is Liberty Chat. I'm Kate Fantinel, Lady Liberty, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
See everyone.
Bye, everyone.